If you said something, you're muted.
We're recording the meeting now.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's now being recorded. Gotcha. Should I say that again?
Sorry, this is Carsten here. Can you share a link to the agenda or something, or where would I find that agenda?
Yes, it was on the meeting, but I can also put it in this meeting chat. Or sorry, it was on the discourse post.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Joke. Yes. Oh, looks like I got a couple more people joined in. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of these working groups before, so maybe there's just an assumption of about 50 minutes of actual time with sort of 10 up front.
And we can get started and get running because I think we have a big agenda, but and we can swap and do the project update first, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, happy to do that. So in terms of projects that I have marked down as the ones we're paying attention to as this working group is the cross-compile tool, system metrics collector, the GitHub Actions framework that you've been working on, Thomas, and then ROS 2 now. Happy to see you here, Karsten, and I'm excited to figure out what it means to have the working group working on ROS. So do we have someone on the phone who can talk about anything that's happened with cross compile in the last 2 weeks since we last met? Was that 2 weeks or has it been longer?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Do you want to give an update, Projecta? Maybe you have any context on cross compile?
Yeah, we don't have any big projects in flight for the cross compile repo. We worked on getting to some of the issues that are filed against the repository. There will be more work in the coming 2 to 3 weeks where we are trying to add ROS1 support in the ROS2 tool.
Okay.
So the plan is to get started on that next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had also a few minor things. So now the setup.py is reading the package version from package.xml, and we got another external contribution around the fixing the logic of how we write to disk. Apparently we had a bug somewhere, and we improved a bit on the documentation. Notably, the setup.py now is more up to date. We have classifiers, we have keywords. All of the metadata around the package is much more solid. And we are experimenting something which is close to how Qualcomm is operating now on releases. We are also pushing the package to PyPy test instance to see if we could distribute cross-compile both through Bloom and PIP the same way as Qualcomm is doing it.
Okay.
And we have Python 3.5 support now. I think that was missing initially.
Oh, it was 3.6. There were some
type
identifiers on member variables.
Right. So now it is it's Rep 2000 compliant. It's 3.5 plus.
Okay, great. Are all those things you were mentioning there issues on the cross-compile backlog?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, I guess, not familiar enough with the context here to get them from reading them, but that's the stuff that's on the backlog then. Cool.
Right, yeah. All of these are issues either open or closed.
Okay. Yeah. And then ROS1 support, is that an issue we have? Because it sounds like that's the plan for working on this going forward.
Yeah, it's not on this repo yet.
Okay.
It's on the AWS roadmap. So once we start working on this, there will be corresponding issues against this repo.
Okay. Yeah, we should probably start tracking it on the tool itself, especially if we're tracking it in this working group context. I believe we can put cross-compile onto that ZenHub board also.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Cool. Then the next one is the system metrics collector. How's that one coming along? That's really all new stuff in the last 2 weeks, pretty much, right?
Yes. I don't have complete context on that repo. but we had a CPU collector node that's contributed. We were actively working on virtual memory metrics this week,
Okay,
and we plan to continue working on it in the next week as well.
great. I assume we have a README on there for those who aren't familiar with what's being put in place. It's fairly simple. Yeah. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar with it, it's just a node to grab some simple system metrics, not meant to replace more advanced tooling like collectd or telegraph or Prometheus, but to be something real simple and within the ROS ecosystem for folks who want to start measuring just a few metrics about their running system. And so defining a message type to be common that could potentially start getting used on more types of metrics. See how that goes. Then Thomas, have we anything new on the GitHub actions?
Yeah, so a few things. I've been I'm still working my way through like adding support for OS X and Windows, so that's still TBD. I also am working toward like supporting code coverage with code for C++. C++ not working yet. Python is done. And then after, I'm not sure exactly where we were last time, but we have ASAN, TSAN support. We have obviously like Linux support. We have code coverage for Python, which is working. We have also a few like minor improvements around like how we distribute it. So until now we were actually bundling the node modules directory to embed dependencies, and I implemented support to use a minifier, so that actually instead of having to embed in the repository like X megs of JavaScript dependencies, we just have a 3-4 megabytes compiled minified JavaScript we use for the action. So that's going to be a bit of an improvement. And I also had on my plate to fix the OS X support, because GitHub Actions is deprecating 10.14 and want people to move to 10.15. So we got that going too.
I see. Okay. So lots of progress going on. This is cool. I'm really excited about this tooling to be just getting all of the use cases done. It gives us a lot of confidence in our code, which is nice. So then the next project is ROSbag. So what have we got new in there?
Is that my turn now?
It could be if you feel like you've got the context, or I know Zach's working on it a lot.
Yeah, I can maybe just like quickly summarize. We have that splitting feature somewhat established and eloquent. Got merged and shipped today.
Like
the ROS Tooling Group is now official maintainer of ROSbag and the ROSbag E2 plugins. And yeah, it's exciting.
Cool. Have we where are we at on the compression feature for I've been a little out of the loop last 2 weeks or so. When are we compressing bags or are we compressing messages?
I think the intention is to support compressing bags. I haven't looked at the OpenPR, but it looks like Anas has one. He's trying to merge in the interface for compression.
Okay. Cool. So that's in progress. That's what we're moving forward with. Perfect. Do we have any other upcoming initiatives on this project, or is that the major focus right now is compression?
I also have a OpenPR where I'm moving some of the functions defined in the I/O interfaces into the base info interface, and I've already commented on this, but I think we should probably have a separate meeting to discuss how to handle Git metadata, since it's kind of required right now, but only for ROS bags that are not written by the ROSbag 2 writer.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a design or specific discussion that could just happen offline, unless we want to get into it here. Okay, and that's, which one of these is that?
I need to open it.
Oh, you haven't opened it yet? Okay.
Yeah, that is the PR, but I need to open an issue for the Git metadata.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Making progress on that. I'm really happy to hear that the splitting's out there. I think a lot of folks will be excited to see that, especially the RoboMaker side. They've been waiting for that feature. Is it bloomed out yet, or is there a schedule for that we have in mind?
Well, it's part of Eloquent.
Oh, okay. So it's released. The Debians are either being built or built already.
Yep.
Cool. So that's the projects that we have currently on our tracking list.
There's a question or a comment in the chat if you scroll down.
Oh, yeah. Ran into issues with multi-threading for bag compression. ROS1 limited compression to a single thread. Do we have multi-threaded writing in ROSbag 2 right now?
Not that I know. Yeah, I don't think it is thread safe.
Okay, so, but not thread safe and only run single threaded. Slightly different.
ROSbag 2 does not use multi-threads at the moment.
Okay. So
we just ended up CPU bound for compression.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Because it was locked to a single core.
Okay. So you ended up CPU bound in use cases in ROS1. So that's something that we should probably pay attention to then. Think about threading it.
Previously I posted some PR, an extensive PR for ROSbag 2. They covered a bunch of the use cases that I ran into. I think I recorded like a petabyte of ROSbag data, and we were peaking at being able to record it like 6 gigabits per second with ROSbag 1. And so that's where we were running into ROSbag compression issues, where we just like run out of CPU. We'd be locked to a single core, and then we'd run out of memory because we just spool.
I see. Sorry, who's talking right now? I don't have a name next to your thing.
This is Bill from HXR.
Oh, okay.
Bill Morris?
Yeah. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Or perhaps we should open an issue to track the... No, nothing?
I believe for compression, we were... well, Devin has proposed that it's going to be single-threaded at... in the initial state, and then we'll worry about multi-threading in a follow-up.
For the first version of the feature. I mean, I think that's fair. Like, put out a version of it, get it working, and then start getting performance cases. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, because we're still in the really early stages of this feature, right?
Yes.
But Bill, it sounds like you have quite some knowledge and experience with it. So like, I'm happy if you could just like, try the PRs out in an early stage. Maybe give some reviews or some comments on it. That would be extremely helpful.
That would really be really helpful.
I talked a lot with Karsten about it. I will try and get a review of this sometime in the next few weeks, and I'll try and just add more PRs.
That's perfect. Okay, so that was that for project updates. Do we have our presenter on the line who's going to talk? Oh, that's you.
Yes, that's me.
Okay, sorry, I saw an email from a Ben, but that's someone else, I guess. I might have been getting my email chains confused. Cool. Yeah, if you want to take over the screen share, be really happy to hear about this stuff.
All right, let's see how this. See if this works. All right, can everybody see this? Or anyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I've shipped a couple hundred TurtleBots over the years, and along the way I've learned some stuff about user experience and user interface that I want to ramble about. And I just finished up a new ROS ISO image for Kinetic for the TurtleBot. It's a USB ISO installer. It installs Ubuntu 16.04. It installs ROS Kinetic. It installs all the drivers and packages necessary to get a TurtleBot up and running. So that's sort of where we're going with this. And I'm hoping to port. I'm hoping in the next week or so to have the melodic port done and to start on the ROS2 port. So we're also working on some issues with ROS startup, network auto configuration, setting up environments and hardware loadouts, and then having some GUI interface stuff. So Rio ISO, or Roll Your Own ISO, it replaces UCK, which we used years and years ago to build ISO images. It supports UEFI, Ubuntu 16.04, and 18.04, and should support all newer releases that we haven't tested extensively. It's something we've developed in-house. It's based on PyDoit to structure a series of tasks to unpack and repack ISO images as a YAML-based config file. It can be used to generate field service, live CDs, or enable write to repair for robots, which I think is useful for some of the robots where you want to ship it with a USB installer, so that in an academic environment, for example, the TurtleBots, a lot of times the professors want to be able to restore the robot at the end of each semester to a base install. This is sort of what the config file looks like. Somebody jump in and tell me if I'm talking too fast. It gives you some basic configuration options. Right now, basically only Ubuntu's been tested and 64-bit, but our hope is to actually go through some of the different variations. It gives you the ability to set up the apt repos for ROS, to be able to set up, install app packages. It can install packages from Debian's. It can install pip, and there's a few other options that are documented in the documentation. There's a video of a robot arm installing. I can upload these slides later. So that generates the ISO image. After that, we want to be able to have the robot start at boot up. So the problem we're really looking at is taking the robot out of the box, and 15 minutes later, we want the robot to be up and doing something, preferably moving, but at worst case, at least displaying point clouds on the screen. So we have this robot system D interface that's designed really to support everybody. And so it can enable it to be started at boot, or enable ROS launch and ROS core to be started at boot or upon graphical login. It starts after the network's online, and it makes sure that ROS core is started first. It also has support for being able to start custom workspaces. So if you have multiple users on the system, each one can have a separate workspace. Their workspaces could be loaded when they log in. So if you had like a robot arm and somebody was logging in to test it in sort of an academic environment, it would start ROS launch upon login, and then when they logged out, ROS launch would stop, and then the next user could log in, and their workspace would automatically be loaded. This is sort of what the systemd launch file looks like. It loads the environment. So systemd has a few quirks. One of them is that environmental variables get loaded in a very specific way. It can only load files in key equals value format, which is very similar to Etsy environment. So we just decided to name these two files Etsy ROS environment, or tilde.ros/environment. And that gives you a place to configure the environment. This setup file is loaded here. This gives you a place to load in whichever ROS setup file you want for your workspace, and then as the Catkin workspaces are chained, it will, if you load a custom workspace, it'll also load the base as an overlay. It splits the instance name, so when you launch the file with system control, it uses a standard interface to be able to act very much like a ROS launch. Network auto configuration has set up via introspection of the network interface. So it actually gets the IP from your network. So it sets up ROS master URI, ROS IP, and ROS host name from the actual network configuration. This allows it to support DHCP, zeroconf, and VPNs. We had huge trouble trying to set up Wi-Fi, DHCP, and having the IP address change each time when you're running ROS master URI. So this handles that. It also has some configuration where you can set it to instead of just going through the default route, you can go through a specific interface so that you can specify a VPN. So it only connects the ROS master UI via the VPN. It installs it in envhook. This allows it to be loaded when the setup.bash is sourced, and it also allows it to be configured via ROS interface. And we've tested it with network managers, so you don't have to change anything on the default user interface for Ubuntu. So if you want to use zeroconf, you just set ROS interface to local, and you just set ROS interface to local, and that will allow hostname.local to work so that other machines can connect to it via the ROS master URI of like turtlebot.local or whatever your hostname is, .local. The VPN interface here is just an example. And then the auto interface actually gets the default route for the broadcast IP address via IP route.
Just a heads
in
up,
building,
me and some other people in the chat aren't able to see what you're showing.
Oh, jeez. Is anybody able to see it?
I can see the first slide in the PowerPoint interface right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just not presenting. It looks like it looks like we're just seeing the slide in the
All right. Thank you for.
I figured it was just my internet connection, honestly.
Yeah,
Cool.
once I
Like,
saw
yeah,
it being mentioned in chat, I was like, I should speak up.
Yeah.
Is this working?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
No.
Maybe you can share the slides and we can all walk through it by ourselves.
Let's see.
Or just show what you were showing before and just manually move without doing the presentation of the slides.
Yeah, I have a feeling it might have just not been updating his screen at all. Yeah, if you want to send the slides out, I think my screen share was working. I'm not sure, but perhaps I could pull up the slideshow on my computer also.
Yeah, let me email out the slides, I guess. I'll just email them to you.
Yeah, you might also just be able to drag and drop it into the chat if you want to do that.
Yeah, I'm having trouble connecting to the chat at the moment.
Oh, weird. Okay, so Chime's not treating you well.
Thomas, maybe an unrelated question while we're waiting for the slides. I missed the part about the action update, but is there a place to where you plan or roadmap or design what's next and how it should work and what different options you want to offer to take a look at and contribute? I just noticed them on the ROSBAG repo. They're really nice, but I think I will probably have some feedback based on what our build fund does for the last years and what options we have.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say not yet, because I'm still trying to figure out what we can do with it, so I don't want to just, throw this in the air before doing a bit of homework. Some of those some of those repos already have issues which are thing we want to do, such as sex support, but not much more than that at the moment. We'll get to it, but we just need to build a bit of knowledge about what we can expect from this system.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, learning the system probably takes a little bit. Maybe when we're at the point, we either can iterate on some high-level tickets, or we just have another meeting. But yeah, when time comes. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, after if you have feedback, just shoot us an email. I mean, or if you have something you want from us on our side, we'd be also happy to get feedback. I mean, or you can also open issues if you have ideas. I mean, we can just iterate on that this way.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you. Yeah. And by the way, I'm also overdue for a discourse post about that stuff. I was keeping that low key until it was stable enough. But we're gonna do that next week or so.
It's starting to look pretty good. It's covering a lot of the use cases you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I was really hoping to get OS X and Windows in, but it's just hard.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big part of it. That's what a lot of people end up having trouble with when they start to run into the, actually running CI on their code.
Yeah, it's a surprise.
I mean, from the high level, we have basically two different approaches for the CI for all the ones we have on Jenkins, right? We either build everything from source, or we have a platform where we do have binaries, and that could be either on Linux where we have Debians, or it could be where we have a nightly build from the last night from master, and then we just build the delta. Yeah. Those are basically the two high-level ones, and the second one, of course, is much faster because you don't build everything. It's way more efficient. And the biggest feature usually people want is if they want to have changes across more than one repo, how can they be able to do that? And I think that would be interesting, how they can actually make sure that they can do cross-repo testing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something which is a bit going into this direction is that Zach opened an issue in Action ROS2 CI around having package names supporting more than one package. So if we change a bit the interface, we should probably be able to at least do call build and test on multiple packages, and then after it's a matter of how you get your VCS input, and I guess you could just come with your own repo file the same way as ci.ros2.org is working right now.
Yeah. Have we lost Bill entirely?
My phone's working, but my internet seems to have crashed on me. We may have to do this over I may have to send it out a little bit later.
Okay. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff, though. The systemd setting up, I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room who has done that before for a robot, built a set of tooling around that, but it's always been proprietary stuff, and I think starting to try and figure out some sort of standardization around robot stacks that start a boot, I don't think anyone's got an argument with that as something that's of high value. I mean,
Yeah, I know everybody's done it once before for their particular use case, but I think I tried to take a survey of all of our previous attempts, and between your work, the work you've done at ClearPath, some of the work I've done previously, really take a survey of the different approaches and try and come up with something that solves everybody's problems.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also part of it we need to figure out sort of the configurational space, and I think the environment setting is really like, where's the high level configuration for ROS? And that's what we're sort of lacking right now, because everything for ROS is distro specific. But there needs to be something outside the distro to sort of provide a OEM or kind of system integrator configuration point.
Yep.
And so I have some proposals for that are sort of built into this. And then the robot indicator, I think, is the other sort of interesting thing, providing a GUI to sort of see what's been launched with System D, to be able to start and stop things, and then also to be able to speed launch it for ROS launch. It has like a little interface. You click on it, and then you can just start typing which package, and it'll auto-complete the package names and give you a drop-down for which launch files are in there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. I mean, even just for viewing what your systemd services are and being able to like see if they're running or not, start them back up. When you start, introducing QA people into the mix when you're scaling up your robot, like giving them that quick interface to just see that everything even is running is really valuable.
I think there's two other things that I really wanted to cover that are just really short here. Our hope is to integrate diagnostics into the indicator so that when the robot's malfunctioning, that there's a way to just look at the screen and see the thing that you're supposed to click on that will drill you down to the right information. And then the sort of last point is sort of from a user experience, user interface point of view. I feel like we've really gotten a long ways with ROS, but we still have this point where there's this cliff at the beginning of the learning experience with ROS where you actually have to know UDEV and systemd and a bunch of other things to actually get ROS running. Whereas when you take a robot out of the box, you shouldn't have to worry about all that to get your robot working. And so I think we need to come up with some standardization for approaches for installing UDEV rules and things like that helps smooth out the user experience for that initial learning curve. And then one other minor point was that the RQT apps right now, when you launch it in ROS1, if ROS master is not running, if you launch it from a desktop GUI link, nothing happens. And so we had to wrap that to be able to create desktop icons for starting RViz. Uh-huh. And then it has a little wrapper that goes and checks to make sure that the ROS master URI actually has something on the other end. And if not, it pops up a little notification so that somebody knows that they just need to start ROS before RViz is going to start working.
Yeah, I think and someone stop me if I'm wrong, I think we're trying to think a little bit more about ROS2 in this working group. And so some of those problems aren't as difficult, which is nice when you're in a ROS2 world. So a lot of this tooling, I'm hoping we can start to aim it at, next generation stuff if we keep moving it forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to get this stuff rolled out for Melodic just because our original funding for this project was based on trying to get the Turtlebots out for Melodic.
Absolutely.
And then, so once that's done, we're going to be starting on ROS2 support. And so that's sort of the plan for trying to port a lot of these concepts and ideas for how to get the user experience a lot smoother. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for talking to us about it. I think it's really exciting stuff, and I certainly agree with the need for it. People don't, they build their workspace manually on their robot and then like ROS launch by hand things, and like you see this all the time, and it'd be really nice to give folks a way to start to productize and out of the box their robot a lot better. Yeah. So one question I had was there a question here of moving repositories around or starting to talk about maintenance, or is that way before that conversation? No thoughts. I'm
I mean, who is this question for? Is it for us here?
I'm not sure. Someone mentioned, and this is why I'm being vague here, is I'm not sure. Someone mentioned something about potentially adopting some repositories, and I thought it was about this stuff, but I'm like under the ROS tooling organization, but I could be mistaken.
I think that the question for us is that, Bill, what's your roadmap, and what do you want? What's your objective with this work in the next few months?
So I'm hoping to finish up the ROS melodic port and get started with ROS2. I think there's parts of this that make sense for ROS2, and I think that maybe those packages that make sense for ROS2 might be worth putting under the auspice of the working group, the tooling working group. But is there another point for UX, UI stuff for sort of what happens when you, I understand that part of the tooling here is for CI related stuff, but also it seems like part of the idea of tooling is how do you get your robot sort of running?
Yeah, it's kind of intentionally vague. It's things that enhance the developer workflow outside of the ROS of the middleware, outside of the communications portion of ROS2, which is perhaps a little too broad, but I don't think we need to narrow it down until we feel like we're overloaded on things.
And also, I think for me, right at the moment, I'm happy to take these projects in any particular direction, but I could really use some feedback. And I also feel like there's been a lot of effort that has been put into the Turtlebot project and sort of the usability for it. And I feel like I would have liked to have publicized that more and gotten more adoption so that we reinvent the wheel less. And if that means somebody has different approaches that we prefer to what I'm suggesting, for example, network auto configuration with the ROS master URI. I understand some of that may be solved in ROS2, but how things like hardware variants are solved, right? Like I have a laptop, a Lenovo, and all the Lenovos put their first battery on bat 1, and every other laptop puts it on bat 0, and so there has to be some configurational difference when I'm loading, depending on which laptop is being installed into the Turtlebot.
Yeah. Oh, so we're talking Turtlebots 2 here, the Kabukis.
Yeah, but I'm happy to roll this out for Turtlebot 3. I mean, this was partly funded from Dabbit Industries.
Oh, okay.
And so their goal is to push out Turtlebots, and they're currently shipping Turtlebot 2s. They ship Turtlebot 3s as well, but I mean the idea here is that the Turtlebot 2 was going to get this one last platform rev.
Yeah. Yeah. So all makes sense to me. What I was wondering, which is a sort of a related but not exactly the same conversation question, is with this working group, something with the governance model that I don't feel like we have figured out is what bar or requirements do we want to have for introducing new repositories under the organization? Does there need to be any sort of entrance criteria there? And if so, what promises are we making as a working group around those repositories? This is just something I've had on my mind. I don't have any answers, so I'm really open to hearing thoughts about that.
I mean, for me, the minimum bar is that everything in this working group has some level of CI, some level of release, and all the, all of that needs to be green at all time. Is basically where I set the bar, because I don't want this GitHub organization to be a gathering of, defunct, project as we go, right? So we need at least to hold ourselves to a certain bar there.
Okay, and then each repository, we're thinking about repos as sub-projects. So we have the governance model, which for those who haven't seen it is under the community repo in the organization. And I think we went over that in the first meeting. There's a lot of information there, and I think we're only really implementing some small portion of it, but we could start to think about project owners, and I guess that's the person then who is responsible for keeping green the sub-project that they have. Do we want to have some sort of a I don't know, a member listing and a listing of sub-projects and project owners to give a little bit of formality to it, or am I like premature on trying to formalize it?
I mean, I think that honestly, once it's in the ROS tooling working group, it's on everyone's plate. I mean, I don't want to necessarily, like put, I mean, at least for maintenance. Development is another story, having like a bit of leadership and have a go-to person for design decisions is probably reasonable. Okay. After, it should always be green. And if it cannot always be green, then we should not recommend that as an official ROS2 tool.
Yeah. We should be pretty careful about what we let admit then.
Yeah.
We need to review that. Yeah. If it's a maintenance burden on the whole group, we need to be careful.
Okay, so there's no guarantees of new features being added, but build failures and bit rot that happens because of new distros and things are the sort of stuff we need to pay attention to the whole working group.
Yeah. I think I would just put the bar on like all tier 1 platforms as defined in the REP 2000 should be supported, plus, we should follow as quickly as possible the ROS distribution. So typically that would mean that we should, if it's not already, release all of that in ROS2E, for instance. It's basically, good stewardship of a normal ROS package.
Makes sense to me.
For a project, has like a primary maintainer, or is like a free-for-all among the whole group?
You may have someone who is like helping for design decisions, but I don't think we want a buzz factor of 1 for any of those projects.
Yeah, that's the problem we're trying to solve with working groups. Is not having a buzz factor.
But just as one comment which we have in the governance document is like when you have a sub project and you have multiple people like owning that, right? You have people reviewing it. Beside all the quality bars Thomas met, which is always good to have good software engineering criteria. But if for example one person brings a project to the working group and says, "Can we put it under your umbrella?" and you say, "Yeah," but nobody else in the tooling working group has an interest in that topic and is actually actively contributing to this, then putting it under the tooling umbrella has very little value, right? So I think it needs to be a project which like more people have an interest in and are interested in pooling resources / contributing. Otherwise, the whole approach of the working group doesn't benefit the project, right? Otherwise, it becomes the umbrella of a lot of people put theirs in, but everybody does their own thing. We just like talk in the meeting about what everybody's doing. But as long as everybody keeps for themselves, there's no benefit.
Right, and so I think the other thing is there's some projects that may be a better fit for another working group. For example, like the indicator thing might fit better with the RQT working group, whereas the System D package might be a good fit.
Yeah, although we're potentially talking about pulling in some RQ-based work here as well. It's just there's nothing formalized yet on that. It's just idle thought of RQ might be a good fit for the scope here.
I think one other thing to
go ahead.
I think one other thing to consider is sort of the documentation state.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of the project, in addition to just all lights being green, but to also have at least enough starting documentation, maybe even API documentation to get going.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think we want to have some sort of minimum documentation bar for projects that we're saying we're maintaining, because like you were saying, Dirk, I think it becomes a maintenance burden if we decide to bring things in here. So that's something we have to consider. Perhaps we want to put it to a vote of the members for bringing in new projects. That would make sense. I have no idea. I'm just throwing things out there. This is so new that it's really, I don't have strong ideas about how it should go.
Personally, something that we could explore is, for instance, every time we want to adopt a repository, we create a ticket in the community repository, and everyone who's already a member, of the working group gets a vote on whether or not they'd be interested into contributing to the development of that package, basically. Yeah.
Sure. I think a ticket on community is a good way to start the conversation on adopting new packages. So that way we can just not be unilaterally adding maintenance burden for the group if we're promising we're going to keep things green and keep a minimum documentation bar.
Yeah, and we also can keep a backlog, because it's not because we don't accept something now, that it cannot be revisited, right? So we can
absolutely, yeah. No now is not no forever for anything.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we have a bit of homework on trying to define what's the bar for the projects we want to adopt and maintain, and maybe from there try to do a bit of work on defining a small process for that,
Yeah, so I think first step of the process is make a ticket on community, and we can work up from there.
Yeah.
And then that's all we had on the agenda. That was the one major conversation point I wanted to hit. Was figuring that out. And then additionally, we have now we have groups, teams within the organization that have varying levels of permissions, and the member group is the lowest level. And we were saying that anyone who wants to be a member of this working group can get in the member tier automatically, right? That's how the governance model works. So anyone who wants to be part of that team, just ping me and we'll add you.
Yeah, or create an issue on the community repo.
Yeah, actually, that's a great way to handle it, because looking through tickets is easier than handling side channels.
And then there can be some examples if other people want to join.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, then, well, I guess we should perhaps look over the board. Although, since we've just added ROSbag 2 to the board, it's not very well organized yet. I have to take a look through this and start to triage. But can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I can see it.
Cool. We've got a ZenHub board, which we're planning to use for project tracking within the working group here. We've got only a few things out of new issues. If you want to view this board within... Oh, you guys already went over this in the last meeting. Sorry, I wasn't there because I was in Macau and it was a weird time, but maybe just a quick overview if those hadn't heard it before. If you want to view ZenHub in the GitHub, you can add a Chrome extension for it. But there's also a separate ZenHub web app that you can view without having to install an extension. So both of those things are available. For the progress here, we're going to treat this as a Kanban type thing. Though we're meeting every 2 weeks, I don't think we're having any concrete expectations of exact due dates on things, but we want to have an idea of what's in progress and what we plan to do. New issues is basically the things that need to be triaged. I don't know how you did it last time, Thomas. Did you guys go through and triage some issues? We're coming on the hour now, so I don't know if we have time for that. But
yeah. Last time we could go through it, but we have much less tickets. So
yeah,
I would say let's give a bit more time for the project, going over the project next meeting, and in the meantime, you and I can also just make sure that the board is well groomed and ready for review.
Yeah, we want to make sure we've got labels on everything, at least enhancement bug documentation. I like the good first issue and help wanted labels. Those are great when we start to think about welcoming people to contribute. Whoever wants to do a little part. So yeah, we can take some time doing that. And anyone who's interested in participating in a little bit of project management here, like doing some issue triage, by all means, please reach out. I know that that's not everyone's favorite thing, but it's useful to have a well-groomed backlog.
Yeah, and just FYI, that's the reason we still want to keep a team for members, is that if you're a member of the working group in these teams, then you get triaging rights, basically. So,
so you can move issues around.
We loosely trust people to do the right thing.
Yeah. Okay, so that triage allows people to add tags and move issues between columns. And okay, yeah, that's great. So yeah, anyone who's a member can do all that, so you can help with the backlog. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about before we go?
No.
Okay. Yeah, really appreciate everyone's time. Bill, thanks so much for giving us the overview on that new tooling. I'm excited to see where it goes and see the ROS2 support. If you could send out that the slideshow so we can all just go over it at our own time, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once my email's working, or once my internet's working again,
yeah.
I'll send out the slides, and then I'll also post which projects I think might be adoptable to the issue tracker.
Perfect.
That'd be great. Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Friday. Or, yeah, I think Friday for everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Happy release day.
Oh, yeah, happy release. Eloquent. Woo!
Bye.